Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joined with Greg Thompson and my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, we are scrambling last minute here. How are you doing, man?
Hey, man, life throws curveballs all the time at you, and you just got to be able to adapt, and that's what we're doing here. We're adapting and switching over to our OG platform here through Spreaker. So hopefully people get the link and can join us live. If not, they'll definitely get us in the podcast form.
Absolutely. It's been a fun and exciting time period here. It seems like literally every time we turn around, there's a new process, there's a new signing taking place, there's something happening, and it's just crazy to be able to keep up with everything that's happening here. So I know tonight we put out a couple different things here. First, we want to talk about Cover One. Cover1.net, we have absolutely amazing coverage going on all over the place. Different updates happening all the time. Eric put out a great video on some of the defensive tackle prospects. He's diving into defensive ends now. We've got updates and content on every possible prospect that's out there. So come check out everything that we have going on there. Aaron, what's your favorite part about the Cover One experience?
Well, right now, my favorite part is all the draft content that's coming out, because I always say I'm not a scout, and I stick by that. I'm definitely not a scout, but the guys there putting in so much work and really preparing me as a fan and somebody that covers the team to talk about the draft and talk about prospects, and really in my own mind build my own board, and helps me with the things like we're going to get into, the mock drafts, and really honing in guys that the Bills like. So the draft prospect, but really where I spend most of my time, probably too much time, my wife would say, is in the Slack channel. Great conversations, great group of guys, really just formed a really unique community that goes beyond football. It's become a group of friends of people I've never met before, and it's a really cool community, and I know you love it too.
Absolutely. It's been fun, and even on a personal note, I had some personal news earlier this week, and I shared it with people in there because they've become close friends. So it's certainly something that we take very seriously and hold dear, and really have enjoyed building a great community that we can trust, and some people that we feel comfortable being able to work with. So tonight, again, we're going to jump right in, do some of the quick updates here of what we've seen so far from a prospect standpoint, from a signing standpoint, and then we're going to go through a live mock draft and kind of see what everybody is looking at. So one of the quick updates we went through as we were going live last week, we actually saw Andre Roberts sign with the Bills. At the time, both you and I were semi-interested, waiting to see how everything came out. The one update that was on there is he is on this roster for 2019. He signed for a 2-year, $5 million deal, $2.6 million cap number. It's actually a $3 million dead cap hit if we cut him. So he is virtually guaranteed to be on this roster for 2018, and that's certainly a big piece of what we're doing. So just a little bit of a surprise there. I don't know if you were surprised by that. I kind of thought he was a likely participant, but maybe a little surprised that it was that much of a lock.
Well, yeah, a little surprised of how much of a lock it was, but I thought that he was definitely going to be a guy on this 53. I think you bring in, not that he's like some big name or anything crazy, but he's been an all-pro. I don't think you bring in that guy unless that he's really going to be on this roster. And I think if you're Isaiah McKenzie and Ray McLeod, I know Ray had that Instagram post of like he's really going to work hard now. I think the writing's on the wall for at least one of those two guys, if not both of those guys, because he kind of fills not only the special teams return side of it, but he can be a gadget. I don't think they'll use him as a receiver of any kind, but he can be that gadget piece that they need with the speed. So those guys better really come into camp and show out and try to earn a spot, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah. So I certainly looks that way, that we have 5 locks on the roster from a wide receiver standpoint. Zay and Robert coming back, and then adding John Brown, adding Cole Beasley, and adding Andre Roberts. The 5 of them look pretty rock solid. So looks like that's where we're locked in. We had another offensive line signing with Adrian Waddle, someone who had a connection with Bobby Johnson, and some of his best performance was actually during that window where they were together in Detroit. And we've actually had some good insight there. He then also brought in the experience and winning record that he brought in from the last couple of years in New England. He has 2 Super Bowl rings from that period. Had 5 starts last year. Basically a swing tackle and a depth guy. I'd say he's pretty noticeably a notch below Ty and Seki, but certainly there as a very solid depth piece and better than anyone we would have had in a backup capacity. Honestly, in my mind, probably close to on par with Jordan Mills. So again, pretty cheap deal, nothing too crazy. Was brought in at a reasonable number from that standpoint, and not anything that I'm expecting to be an enormous number, but right at $2 million. So not someone who's necessarily guaranteed to make the roster, pretty similar to Frank Gore, where if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, it's only a $400,000 dead cap hit. So something that he's not a absolute lock, but looked like a pretty solid addition from a swing tackle standpoint.
Yeah, swing tackle depth, and honestly, Jordan Mills, we give him a lot of guff, and I've given him a lot on this show. But if he was a backup swing tackle, that's exactly what he should be. That is his role in the NFL. And if you kind of can have that guy, that's not a bad thing. And he's a vet, and Bean has talked about wanting vets on the line. So this gives them that flexibility that we continue to talk about. If they do draft, if tackle or tackles fall to them in the draft, or however it works out, they can get rid of them, and it's not a huge hit. But he's prepared himself going into this draft to be able to go best player available truly. And I think that they would be totally content riding into the season with Waddle there as a depth rotational guy.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I think that it gives them some flexibility. There was a just an option to be able to have a guy there, so really like that. We then went a little while without a signing, and now all of a sudden kind of got a little bit crazy today that we've actually now seen two movement guys that came in on visits. Jake Fisher has officially signed. That's looking like a pretty modest deal, but a 1-year deal. He was actually a former offensive tackle with the Cincinnati Bengals and has formally transitioned to tight end, which is not something you see all that often. So we are seeing, an interesting signing. I had tweeted yesterday when it was reported that he was visiting that I like the idea of that kind of player versus just throwing a dart with someone like Logan Thomas that I don't think had a lot of upside. Whereas, maybe he ends up being something that can have value as a legitimate blocking tight end. He actually mainly played that last year. He was exclusively pretty much the sixth man in their jumbo sets, regularly reporting as eligible, and actually had a 31-yard reception last year on top of a handful of other receptions. So he's basically been playing tackle eligible for a little while now and just did it more formally. So I don't expect that to be any kind of roster lock. And I actually joked about, I think he's basically insurance that in case the board doesn't fall right and we don't get to draft the tight end that all of us want to be able to draft, and we definitely still want that, but if it does, there is combinations where the draft could fall just a certain way and we end up getting really good players and don't get a tight end, that now we have a guy there who we can go into the season with Croft, Jason Kroom, and Jake Fisher and have something feasible.
Yeah, and Brandon Bean isn't going to take the fourth, fifth best tight end on a reach just because that was a need going into the draft. If the board doesn't fall their way, they're not just going to take a guy late because they need one. And this is just further indication of that. They're going to bring guys in to fill that before the draft so that they can still, like we said about the offensive line, still play best player available when it comes to the draft. So I think this is a great strategy. I'm super excited that they're just filling in pieces and special teams pieces and guys for camp bodies before they get to the draft to just really have the options when their picks available to just go after their board and not chase pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And again, that's exactly what I mean by the insurance comment. And I still want to see that at a couple other positions. But another visit that we had in and quick signing is certainly a Heath Farwell special. So now we not only got John Feliciano and Adrian Waddle for Bobby Johnson. Heath Farwell put in a request of his own, and they actually had Nico Thorpe and Maurice Alexander, both Seattle special teams aces, in for visits, and they signed Maurice Alexander. So again, they actually list him at linebacker. He's been listed at safety and linebacker throughout the years. I joked in the Cover One Premium channel that I'm pretty sure they listed him as linebacker because they don't want to explain why they're keeping 6 safeties, and didn't want to add him to the mix with with Bush and Saran Neal and Dean Marlowe fighting for those backup spots there. So I actually, again, this is just reading tea leaves and me guessing, I think that them listing him at linebacker is a pretty direct shot to Deion Lacey, and meaning that his spot is absolutely in jeopardy. So Lacey did technically re-sign and come back here, but he came back at a veteran minimum deal with no dead cap space. So certainly something that I view that signing with someone like Heath Farwell. I'm guessing pretty much hand picking him, that he came in here as the potential special teams ace that can kind of help him preach that.
Yeah, and you've been trumpeting this all offseason. I've been just parroting your comments that that's what this offseason was all about, was getting rid of that dead cap so that you can add the depth that we lacked last year across the board to create the competition at these positions. So I think we're just seeing that come to fruition, and this is a signing that indicates that exact type of move. And I expect a few more of those, actually. Some of the guys you don't really know much about, but they're going to push other competition on this roster, and I'm all for that. I can't wait to see this summer when guys are just battling for their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot in the premium Slack that there's going to be some. Honestly, I actually think the Slack channel is going to be an ugly place on cutdown day, because there are going to be guys who are going to be favorites of yours, of mine, of different guys in there who are not going to make this team. And there's going to be, I'm going to say, more than one, maybe substantial surprise as it gets there, because we just keep adding guys. Another visit that I know you were a big fan of, they brought in Quentin Spain, who is a guy who has started, I think, 31 of the last 32 games for the Titans the last 2 years. It sounds crazy to think that they could sign 6 free agent offensive linemen, but he'd be a great add. And I made the comment in the Slack channel that if they sign Quentin Spain, I think that pretty much signs the death warrant for Russell Bodine, and that means that either John Feliciano or Spencer Long are absolutely the interior backup guy. So just the fact that they're bringing that guy in, who is going to sign for a little bit more than what those guys did, I would assume Spain might be $5, $6, $7 million to get there.
Sure.
But the fact that they brought him in for a visit, he didn't sign yet, so I'm going to read that as, hey, if you're still out there, and the exact same comment I made at tight end, if the board doesn't fall just right and we don't walk away with a Chris Lindstrom or a Dalton Reisner or a Garrett Bradbury or whoever we like at guard, or Phil Hughes later on, then, hey, maybe we're going to give you a call and we're going to be ready to go, because we're still planning on adding one more lineman. So I in my mind, I'd like it to be that, because I still would prefer the draft. But, hey, sign all the good offensive linemen we can. I'll never turn one down.
Yeah, and Bean again has made it a priority to bring in vets. So this guy, Spain's got a lot of starts. He's done well in pass protection. So obviously you're here to try to protect Josh Allen. You just don't know what you're going to get with a rookie. Sometimes they take a little bit of time to develop. It's a good insurance policy in my mind. If that's who they want to bring in, I'm all for it. But yeah, somebody's going to go if he comes in. Maybe they keep guys around for camp and let the battle take place. But I think if Spain comes in and kind of the contract that you're saying, I think that he comes in as a lock to make the roster, and that battle starts to become between Feliciano and Bodine and those guys they're behind him. So again, it's going to be a fun summer, and I'm all for having too many linemen in training camp this year, because it was the biggest problem last year. And how do you fix that? You bring in a bunch of guys and let them compete, and let the best guys, the cream, rise to the top.
Absolutely. I love it. And, I mean, from a hindsight standpoint, would I have preferred that they just signed Quentin Spain instead of Feliciano or Long? Probably. I think that would maybe be a little cleaner. But if they bring him in and let them all compete, and we end up, eating a little bit of money from getting rid of somebody, or heck, we saw last year Bean signed AJ McCarron in this time of year, and then flipped him for a draft pick before the start of the season. So it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility for Bean to do so. So I'm all for bringing in more competition and letting Bean figure it out. He's a smart guy, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're going to see some more stuff. So right before the draft, I think we'll see a couple more guys come in that just fill those needs, like you said. So
Absolutely.
what else we got tonight?
Why don't you go ahead and take us away? Lead us on a fun journey for you guys have heard this on a couple other podcasts around the area. Aaron, I thought it was a good time to step back and take a look at where we stand now. We just rattled through the signings and went through all that first wave with 10. Amazingly, we've signed 14 guys, and we'll see where that leaves us and what our options are here on draft.
Yeah, so if you're a member of the Cover One Slack or the premium membership and you're in the Slack channel, we have our own channel dedicated to mock drafts, where people have been dropping them in for months now, really. Different mock drafts from different simulators all around, and it's always a fun discussion. I have been doing them, but I'm not really a fan until after free agency, right? Because we just don't know how it shakes out. So we've been holding off doing it on the show until free agency started to shake out. Obviously, signings will still be coming in. That's fine. So tonight we're going to use fanspeak.com. They have the on the clock. I don't currently have it, but last year I had the whole premium Fanspeak package, and for guys like Greg, the cap lovers and people that love numbers and stuff, it is a lot of fun to just play around with the whole off season Fanspeak.
I'd love to tell you how many times I've done the Ultimate GM. I do have the whole package from Fanspeak and the entire process. They have an Ultimate GM package where you can go in and literally decide who you're going to re-sign, who you're going to cut, all the free agents. They simulate and negotiate against you on each individual contract. I'd like to tell you how many times I've done that, but I'm probably a little embarrassed. So say it's a lot.
Yeah, we don't need your wife to think any less of you if she hears this.
I appreciate that. That.
So we're going to go into that right now. I need Greg's advice. So we're going to work off of the CBS aggregated board. Fanspeak gives you a number of boards you can play with. So just more ways to waste your time and get different options for boards. I tend to go with Matt Miller's or the CBS aggregated one just because I don't know all the other guys. And I do know Matt Miller's work and the CBS work, so I tend to stick with those boards personally. So we're going to go with the CBS one. For team needs, you then go in to select team needs. We have Fanspeak Steve, user voted, or NFL mock. What would you like to do, Greg?
I actually use the user voted because I actually think that from
they're pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good crowdsourced idea, and I think fans have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a great idea, but some fans probably. We'll stick with classic difficulty because what we're not gonna do in this is Fanspeak does allowed for trades, and trades will pop up. For the sake of the show, we're not gonna get into fantasy trades because Greg and I will trade down and we'll have a bunch of picks in the second and third round. And
you don't think it's okay to have 7 second-round picks and try to figure out how to do that?
Yeah. So we're
maybe a little unrealistic.
Yeah, we're not going to do that tonight. So we'll stick with the classic. So, Greg, how I envision this is basically we got 2 of us. I always do these solo. So you're a numbers guy. You love playing the wizard of Brandon Beane. So I'm going to kind of have you be the Brandon Beane, and I'll be the Sean McDermott. And as we come to our pick, we'll kind of see who's on the board. I'm screen sharing with Greg this. So we'll see who's left on the board and kind of talk out if we have differences, our prospects, and why. I don't know that we're going to have a ton of differences just because we've done so many different mocks. I think
we're pretty closely aligned, but we'll still have some.
Yeah. So we're going to hit the let's draft here and see what happens. Bear with us, guys. This is our first time doing a mock live. I hope my internet stays functioning. I am a Spectrum customer, so that you never know.
Always in question. No, and I think for anyone who hasn't had a chance to take a look at Fanspeak, it's really been a good tool for us to get an idea because it just gives you a ballpark of where things are at. And there's always going to be some guys going earlier. And I know there's a lot of different sites out there. We might play with some other ones in the future here to make sure that we're set up and have a chance to get a different perspective and a different idea on some things. But I think it's certainly going to give us a chance to look at, hey, what is your interpretation of it? Where does that take us? And you know what it is, but I think they have a really good view of it.
Absolutely. So here we go. We are coming up on our pick here. Let's see. It loaded slow. So our boy Quinnen went 1, Josh Allen 2, Nick Bosa 3, Devin White 4, Byron Murphy 5, Jonah Williams 6. It's loading very slow for me right now. It's not their site. It's definitely my connection through Skype. Here we go. Ed Oliver 7. DeAndre Baker 8. And so we are sitting here at the 9th pick You just heard who's gone. We're going to go with best player available through their list. Let's scroll back up to the top here. We have Montez Sweat, a guy I know that you are very excited about. We have Jawan Taylor, a guy that's often mocked to the Bills. Rashawn Gary, Christian Wilkins, Farrell, Greedy Williams. Obviously, Haskins and Murray are not. That would be ideal for us, though, right? If Haskins and Murray are.
Yeah, I will say, in all honesty, this is the exact scenario the Bills are looking for: is to get one or two surprises. There's actually three here. If we can get anyone in the quarterback, linebacker, cornerback range to go ahead of us, right now, I would be shocked if Brandon Beane wouldn't trade down in reality with Haskins and Murray there. And I'm going to say 5 or 6 guys that I really like: Montez Sweat, Jawan Taylor, Christian Wilkins, DK Metcalf, TJ Hawkinson, all guys that Brian Burns, all guys I think they would consider. I think that with all the signings we've had, I would lean towards edge versus the offensive tackle. And I think that without bringing anyone in, I would lean towards Montez Sweat. I know that there's been reports of a heart condition, and I know I made the point that the NFL is uber conservative. They sent home multiple guys this year, and they sent home Mo Hurst last year. They did that test and then greenlighted him to take part in every drill. There's no way they take on that liability if it was a major red flag. So I'm still pretty comfortable with him. I would vote for Montez Sweat as a close tiebreaker over Jawan Taylor.
So this is going to be tough because I'm going to argue you for Taylor here, because I do understand the upside of Sweat and I see the need at the edge. I do think that there's going to be some edge players available to the Bills in a little while, but I think Taylor is substantially better than a lot of the tackles in this draft. And I do know they did get some vets to come in and play in that swing tackle position. I still don't know what we have with Deion Dawkins. And so we got some aging guys and a rookie that you just don't know what you have at tackle. So you have this opportunity to take the first. Well, he's not the first. Jonah's gone, but you have the opportunity to take one of the best ones. I might go with Taylor, but I'm not going to be mad at you as the GM if you say Sweat's the guy, because we do need a playmaker long term on the defensive line.
No, I think that's a good call, and I think that with where the team is going and who's more processy, I could see Jawan Taylor being rated ahead of Montez Sweat. So let's go ahead and make Jawan Taylor the choice.
All right, Jawan Taylor to the Bills. Hopefully our franchise tackle there.
That's
for
right.
A long time.
We're not going to rattle off all 32 picks in between this one and our second one, but Dwayne Haskins went. TJ Hawkinson did
goes
go.
At 16.
Sweat right after him.
I think 16 is actually a really good spot. We've had a lot of debate about where Hawkinson's going to go, where tight end should go. I think a lot of people's boards he'll be in the top 10, but I think because of the tight end, where tight ends tend to get drafted, I think he'll be in the mid first round.
I agree. I think that he's a primary target on a trade down. I built a board earlier where if the top 8 picks are basically all the tackles, all the defensive ends, all the defensive tackles, that it's possible that TJ Hawkinson is our top pick at 9. I have a hard time finding a reality where that happens, and I think it's going to be tough to be able to do that. So in this scenario, DK Metcalf went 32 to the Patriots, which I think would annoy me a little bit, but is probably more realistic to where his value is. I know a lot of fans like the workout and what it looked like with DK Metcalf, but I think he's more of a late first, early second round guy. All right, we're up here in the second round.
Yeah, and if this keeps running long, guys, maybe we do 5 rounds, because we have so many 5
a lot of late picks
to get through. And we talk about this a lot in the Slack channel. The Bills aren't going to walk away with 10 players, most likely. Anyway, there's going to be some trades. So here we are sitting at the second round. Right, we're at our pick now.
Yep.
All right, so we're at our pick now. I know where I want to go,
and it's the right pick.
Okay.
And now I would say in this scenario, some of the things, if we had have gone Sweat at number 9, I would have wanted Chris Lindstrom, who's gone. I would have wanted Dalton Reisner, who's gone. So I think that you had some good logic there, that waiting to try to get that impact offensive lineman in the second round is a little dangerous. I was kind of hoping Jeffrey Simmons would fall. I actually don't hate hate the idea of getting a top 5, top 10 talent that maybe we redshirt, and it makes it easier to use those 10 draft picks to redshirt him for 2020. But obviously one of our biggest needs is Irv Smith. Tight end is right there, and it's what we need to be able to go. So I would have loved to see, I think it's rare people think that Noah Fant could fall, but Irv Smith I think is a slam dunk in that second round pick, and now adding a weapon like him makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I don't have to tell people how much I love him, and he's sitting there right there for me. The only other thing I would maybe have those arguments with the draft board for the Bills, obviously Rocky Sin. We had our DB coach at the pro day with Temple. Yeah. He's a good fit. The cornerback Amani, I don't know, I'll butcher his name, from Penn State. He's another guy that I could see as a fan. Then Deebo Samuel, I know a guy that you like a lot. Yeah. And so there are some options there for the Bills, but I think we talk about best player available. Irv should be up there on the board at that spot anyway, and it's a need. So I think with it being one of the best players, probably in that top 10 of this area, and a need, you go with the need.
Yeah, if we had have gone Sweat there, I probably would have lobbied for Yadni Kajus, the defense, the offensive tackle from West Virginia. This format also ranks Hakeem Butler pretty low, which makes me a little bit crazy. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So with our first 2 picks being offense, I do think that we need to look defense for this one. Not that it has to be. There can still be. Again, the signings allowed us to go best player available, but if we can see an interior player, a defensive end, one of the cornerbacks that we like, I think that there's some logic to bring in one of those guys here. We could still see an interior lineman. We could still see a receiver. So definitely plenty of needs on the board. And again, the reason Brandon Beane has signed 14 people, and again, neither of Aaron or I think these are the last guys they're going to sign, is that he wants to free himself up to go best player available. And maybe that's 4 or 5 offensive guys, 4 or 5 defensive guys, which I think would be shocking. But he wants to free himself up to follow the board and take the best players there. And that's why he signed so many free agents, to fill in those needs per se and allow him to do that.
All right. So we are loading here into the 3rd round, my favorite round.
A lot of value. One of the guys I was looking at, Joe Jackson, defensive end from Miami, was one of the first picks to go there, so that was a tough call. This
your boy Sin right there.
This is a pretty good example of exactly what I was talking about. So there are some good players out there. I know some people like we have Terrell Hanks, a really good linebacker that's left. Even interior lineman Eric McCoy. That's our guy Eric is a big fan of him. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. In this scenario, Hakeem Butler fell all the way to the 75th pick. I think that's a pound the table, sprint up to the podium kind of pick. And if we walked away with Juwan Taylor, Irv Smith, and Hakeem Butler in our first 3 picks, I would be absolutely ecstatic. So in reality, I think Michael Dieter is a realistic option here at guard, someone they would consider. Again, Connor McGovern, I think, is another interior guy that they would consider. And I know a receiver you like. I think Terry McLaurin is fantastic. But I'll say from an upside standpoint, I think it's tough to pick him over Hakeem Butler. I don't know that I think it's realistic that Butler's going to make it all the way here, but we're simply going to read the tea leaves the way they fall here. Yeah. That would be easily my choice here.
Yeah, I'm going with Butler too, just because I think he has more upside than DK Metcalf. And if Metcalf's going to the first round and this guy's sitting there, obviously take it. I love Terry McLaurin, but Eric pointed out to me, I think that the writing is on the wall for him not being a Bill because of the moves they made in free agency, because of the guys they're bringing in for special teams. It's not looking good for my Terry McLaurin crush, unfortunately. I think there's still a place for him on a roster like this. It's just getting worse and worse by the day for me.
Yeah, I think it does make it tough. Again, the signing specifically today, that was the gunner role that he would have had, maybe that trump card to really be there. And now bringing in a guy like Mo Alexander, and they brought in Nico Thorpe, who could still be signed. It doesn't take him off the board by any means. It just means maybe a little bit tougher. And like I said, the idea that Andre Roberts is for sure making this roster, and there's only one spot left. I would like it to be a tall, rangy, catch radius, high point guy who can run that back shoulder fade, who can do the jump ball in the end zone. And honestly, Hakeem Butler is by far the number one guy in that role in my mind, but is someone that I would certainly like.
And I don't believe a lot of people have said because of the free agent acquisitions that they got that wide receivers all set. I think that's far from the truth. I think that they help themselves in building a nice room, but that if you have the chance to get a playmaker, like or anybody really that's a playmaker in this draft, you do it. So here we sitting at the 4th round. We got some guys on the board here. I do think, wow, Bryce Love is really high on this board, particularly. I don't like that. But I think that I know you said now we've taken 3 offensive players, right?
Yeah.
And I know you said we're getting a little offensive heavy here, but I think we're starting to get into this next round here in the next couple picks of ours where we're going to have to maybe consider bringing in a running back for the future.
Absolutely.
I know you're big on rookie running backs. There's a bunch of names sitting here.
This range right here, one of these 2 4th-round picks, maybe the first 5th-round pick, I think is the perfect range for that. Who else is there? If we click to edge, I'm curious, does someone take Max Crosby already? Okay.
No, he's there.
I would say this pick or the next pick. Honestly, the guy I wanted is literally the one who went the 1 pick before us. Kalen Saunders is a guy. Everybody knows him as the backflipping guy from the Senior Bowl. He is a really talented defensive tackle. He's who I would have lobbied for here. Nate Davis, a guard from Charlotte, is a guy that we've seen a lot. I know in talking with Eric earlier, he thinks that Max Crosby is a late 3rd-round value, so I think it's fair to pick him here. Our choice would be out of the running backs. Let's say our next 2 choices are going to be a defensive end and a running back. It's just figuring out which order. At running back, we have Justice Hill, Miles Saunders, Mike Weber, Rodney Anderson, Benny Snell. Do any of those guys really jump out ahead of the rest for you?
Sanders, I think.
Sanders and Hill are the 2 I would lean towards.
Yeah, and I think Sanders' versatility gives him the edge. I love the way when we had Jordan Reed on the podcast, I love the way that he spoke about him, and I trust his evaluation. So I'm going to pretend he's one of our area scouts for this simulation. So I like I liked his view of Sanders, and I think that he could be a guy that could sit for a year and actually become a legitimate running back 1 here in the next 2 to 3 years, which would be huge if you could get that in round 4.
Yeah, let's go ahead and this kind of thing happens in the draft rooms. Let's go ahead and roll the dice that Miles Saunders is the top guy on our board, and they have Max Crosby down a bit lower and somewhere that maybe we can roll the dice and still be able to get him in our later 4th-round pick. And I think this is the kind of decision that happens on draft day. So let's go ahead and take Miles Saunders as our future running back. I think it's perfect to bring in a guy like that.
Right after.
Yeah.
That's another good guy, but I think we filled that need. I know a lot of people like Boykin at the combine, but I think that's a need we filled.
A lot of the guards I was looking at, Roshbacher from Alabama and Nate Davis both went. Got a couple more picks here. All right,
Dylan Mack's a big body I like.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this worked out perfect. We were able to kind of hold the line. We ended up still getting who I think is a late 3rd-round value. Max Crosby was almost a record-setting guy from the relative athletic score. Some of you guys see Math Bomb on Twitter does the RAS rankings. Max Crosby was out of this world. He actually tested better than Quinnen Williams and Nick Bosa and some of the other, and even Montez Sweat, who was one of the top 15 all time. Max Crosby was literally number 1 this year. So someone who maybe isn't built like the traditional big defensive end, but a guy that I think has a ton of value in being able, especially with our situation now, bringing in a guy like him where we still have Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson, Trent Murphy, and he just needs to rotate in maybe 35-40% of snaps and just on long passing downs. I think he's a great guy, and then maybe with a year in an NFL weight room and nutrition system, we could put a little weight on him and really be in good shape. So why don't you give us a recap of what we've got so far from a position standpoint?
Yeah, so right now we drafted Juwan Taylor, offensive tackle, tight end Irv Smith, wide receiver Keem Butler, running back Miles Sanders, and an edge Max Crosby. And when we talk about the edge also, I think that, it's okay to take a guy that you have a 4th-round grade, 3rd-round grade on and hope that he pans out, because also this team is going to be a work in progress into the 2020 season. You're going to have draft picks. Think of all the needs they're not going to have to fill next year, and the guys that they're going to be able to take swings on earlier or free agents are going to be able to take swings on. So I know we don't have a lot of guys locked up beyond the 2020 season on the defensive line. I expect that to change. Brandon Beane's shown that he is not scared to go out and get the needs to fill his team. So here we are sitting on the clock, round 5.
We're still up kind of 4 offensive guys versus 1 defense. Sure. I think that
I'd like to see an interior.
Yeah, so I was leaning towards either Dalen Mack is a defensive tackle that I like from Texas A&M. I think he has some value. There's also 2 corners that I like. Both Sean Bunting and Savion Smith are 2 guys that I think are kind of in play potentially, and guys that I like the name of. But I would actually lean towards Dalen Mack. I think that adding a guy, the same thing, we just added Crosby to be that 4th defensive end. I think Dalen Mack would make sense as a 4th defensive tackle. I don't think it's out of the question. There's some really good values at wide receiver still left here. But I would lean towards Dalen Mack as my recommendation.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's totally cool. I love it. Let's get some youth on this defensive line. I would say if I was going to try to make an argument for anybody in this area here in this particular draft, I would say Mike Edwards was a guy they met with at the Senior Bowl. Nice. And I think that they want to get some more depth at this actual safety position. So I think that could be a good one and maybe push some of the safeties. And then if we weren't able to get Hakeem Butler like we did in the 3rd round, David Sills sitting here would be a really nice value, I think. But since we already addressed wide receiver, I think that would be unfair to him as a prospect to even bring him into this room at this point, and just give us a numbers game that isn't really fun to deal with later in the summer. So I think Mack is a great value right here.
Absolutely.
So let's do that. Let's see how the rest of this falls, because there's some guys down here, man. You know, we talk about bringing in Spain, and I'm looking at a guy here on the board, and I'm hoping that he doesn't fall off.
If it's the same guy. Yeah, there's a couple guys here that are very interesting. Yeah, that there's one that maybe if I had seen him earlier, I would have snagged him. But Drew Samia, I think, is a great option.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to go with that too. Let's assume we can't get Spain, and we've told them, hey, let's see what happens in the draft. You know what? Now we don't have to call you. We're going to roll with the rookie and keep that contract control.
Absolutely. And like just like we prepped in that discussion, I think that kind of visit with Spain where he didn't walk away with a contract is, you know, very similar. Honestly, I could see Ziggy Ansah being the same kind of thing that, hey, we have it out there and he's not ready for our number. And the closer he gets to the draft, the tougher that gets. And hey, if we pick Montez Sweat, sorry, tough luck. But if the draft goes exactly like we did here, you know, maybe he is in play. But what he risks is, what if the Bills really like Max Crosby and we walk away saying, hey, we feel like he can be our 4th guy and rotate in and we're good now. So I think that's a thing that Brandon Beane will use for leverage. So what we wrapped up here in these 5 rounds, I think is a great haul and something that, you know, I feel really comfortable puts us in a really solid position from a talent standpoint. You know, offensive tackle Juwan Taylor is right there at the top of our list. When we passed on Montez Sweat, I specifically had Max Crosby in mind, and Eric's planted that seed with us that maybe we don't go that route because they think they can get Crosby later on. He's one of our top 30 visits. They've done a lot of stuff with him. We crossed off a checklist offensively with Irv Smith and Hakeem Butler, got Miles Sanders to mentor behind Shady and Gore. This would be a fantastic haul if we were able to really make this a reality.
Yeah, and I think that still, even though we're talking about best available, that we've been able to, based on this particular board, still hit in that best player available range while maintaining need. So I'd be super happy here as a fan. Like, we're not going to get all 10 picks here. Do you want to continue to run through these last couple picks real quick, or is it even worth it?
Yeah, I think we're guessing now. We can even say from a position standpoint, if we get to this standpoint where we've made these kind of picks here, I would expect the next couple picks to be some linebackers, some corners.
Yeah, let's go Blake Cashman round 6. He had a visit.
I like it. I know that a lot of times there's a handful of late corners that I pick regularly in these models with like Mark Fields from Clemson is a common one for me. There's a handful of different guys depending on how they fall.
Khalil Hodge is a name that
Khalil
people
Hodge,
recognize.
From Buffalo. I think that's a definite guy that, maybe got a little bit tougher with Maurice Alexander signing there today, but I think they're going to bring in some competitive defensive special teams depth and guys who can make a run in that standpoint. And again, I think that they really addressed a lot of positive needs here.
Yeah, and I think another guy we saw on this board a little bit too early for my liking was Bryce Love, and we've seen a lot of
Yeah.
him to Buffalo in the late, seventh round, and that goes back to if they are going to keep the 10 picks, get some guys you redshirt, and I think that's a perfect example of a guy that you just redshirt for a year and see what happens. If he can bounce back to the way he was a year ago, great. If not, he's a seventh round pick. You just part ways and say, you know what, we had the pick, we used it, whatever. Let's see here. They got 2 7ths, right?
Yep.
Honestly, when I start getting to these mocks in the seventh, I start to lose my how many guys I know. I'm not this much of a draft geek here. So
I think
Terry Godwin's a guy that I know, and I really like him a lot, but I don't know that we need to bring another receiver into the fold.
I would say with the way it's lined out so far and the fact that there isn't a corner yet down at 245, I think it's absolutely a lock that they would pick a corner. So whether it's Derek Beatty, I see Mark Fields down there from Clemson, I think 245 on your list. He's one that I would probably lean towards because I don't see that Sean McDermott is ever going to have a draft where he doesn't take a corner. So I think that he's a very likely choice.
Yeah, I've said for years now that you have to at least get one cornerback every single draft and hope that one of them hits. I think they'll bring in a lot of corners actually in undrafted free agency this year. So then we're on to another one. What do you want? Just
I'd say that they'd look. I think that either I think you could still see a safety here. That Kingsley Keke from Texas A&M on the defensive line is another option. Certainly gives us a little bit of flexibility. I know that I don't think it's likely that they trade Shaq, but he's certainly someone that's been kind of bandied about as an option there. But you could also look. I know that some of the other podcast hosts in the area would like the idea of drafting a punter or a kicker. So it's not crazy with some of the injuries that are in place, whether that's Hauschka's back or simply wondering if Corey Carter or Corey Bojorquez is going to end up being any good.
Sure.
So, I think a special teams kind of addition there to give, Farwell another guy to work with might be not too crazy.
Well, let's go with Keke. I do think that there would be even though, we've stayed away from wide receivers since taking Butler, I think Dortch would be an interesting guy to maybe draft and then put in on the practice squad. I think that he's got a lot of learning to do, but he has the physical traits to be a fantastic wide receiver if he can put it all together.
I agree. So where's our recap here? How did we end up doing?
So we finished up, obviously, we got Jawan Taylor, first round, pick 9, Irv Smith, second round, pick 8, third round, pick 10, we got Hakeem the Dream, the Freak Butler, round 4, pick 10, Miles Sanders, running back, Penn State, round 4, pick 29, maybe the value of the draft, Max Crosby, Eastern Michigan, edge, then right behind him, pick 5, or round 5, pick 9, Dylan Mack. Round 5, pick 20. This is a great round for us. Dylan, some big, heavy bodies coming in.
I like large humans. Large humans.
Yeah. Blake Cashman, round 6, pick 8. And then these are kind of throwaway picks for us here. Round 7, pick 11, Mark Fields. And round 7, pick 14, Kingsley Keke. So that wraps it up. And I think we filled a lot of needs. And I'm excited to get these guys into camp.
Honestly, I agree. I would love if it fell this way. I think it really gave us a lot of options to be able to kind of take a look at how everything shook out, and we added a lot of talent doing it. So this is just a fun exercise. I think being able to go through and just see, hey, what would we do if it fell this way? Hopefully everybody listening enjoyed being able to kind of see this kind of view and what's out there. And as we appreciate your flexibility and how we jumped around doing this here, jumping onto Spreaker last minute, I thought it actually came off really well.
Yeah, no, not too bad. Hey, sometimes like Eric tweeted out, you got to roll with the punches and just kind of go with it. So I appreciate everyone that's listening's flexibility and your flexibility to be able to just roll with me here in a time of panic at like right before we went live.
No, I actually think we hit it very well. You guys have no idea how many expletives and crazy things that we were doing. One thing we wanted to bring up here, tonight's show was actually sponsored by Jim Ruther. So a lot of you guys see all of the things that he has out there each day, a ton of awesome memorabilia for the Bills. I actually have quite a few things behind me here that Jim has offered and been able to bring out there. So he's someone that I really enjoy kind of interacting with. Great Bills fan. You guys see him on Twitter Twitter. His handle is at Jimmy JIMMYREU 81. We actually have 2 giveaways that we're doing tonight. We have an awesome Sports Illustrated cover from back in '95 that has Steve Tasker on it that he autographed with Go Bills 89 along with his signature, and a really cool shot that some of you might have actually seen behind me. I actually bought one myself of a black background shot of Marv Levy in a winter jacket and a winter Bills hat that he wrote autographed Marv Levy in Hall of Fame '01 on. So just a really cool opportunity. Jim does a lot of events around Western New York and offers a ton of really cool memorabilia to Bills fans. So something that we thought it was a cool way to give back to all the fans and everything you guys have been doing for us, to be able to make this a fun and exciting experience. We thought that was a good way to be able to give back a little bit of something that we have going on here and appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. So because of the challenges that we've had on the live YouTube, we were going to pull it out of the chat there. We're actually going to be able to go in and choose it from some of the folks who retweeted the event for tonight. We'll reach out to you guys individually and really appreciate some of the folks that shared the news for everything that we have going on here and appreciate what you guys do for us. Aaron, what else do we have before we wrap up for tonight?
Yeah, so Jordan Reed, if you're not following him from the show that we did with him, definitely make sure you are following Jordan Reed. He's about to drop his draft guide. It is 260 more than that prospects, just scouting reports on those guys. So if you really want to prepare for the draft, Jordan Reed's going to be your guy. I think that he's doing an early bird release. You have to look at his tweet. So go follow him on Twitter. He's doing an early bird release for, I think, $10 for the draft guide. That's a steal. It's got so much content in it that's totally worth the $10. And so that's really the thing that I'm looking forward to the most. And we got to stop having show sponsors of guys that I frivolously want to spend money on. Between 26 shirts and Jim, those two, whenever they're tweeting, man, I just want to give them all of my money.
Yeah, it gets a little bit tough. So again, really appreciate everything you guys have done to make the show awesome here. The fact that we still had people in the chat and so many from our Cover One, the premium Slack channel in there tonight, Chris and Nick and Chip and everybody. It's been awesome, and that really means a lot that you guys jump in there. So I see Dominic, I see Keith is in there, everybody in there hanging out with us tonight. We really appreciate you guys rolling with us and being able to take part. So thank you guys very, very much. We genuinely appreciate it. For tonight, you guys can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Have a lot of fun. We've been trying to be as civil as possible, but a lot of people are coming at the Bills, and Aaron and I have probably spent an inordinate amount of time defending them. But anything that the people can see from you, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm not civil, and you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716. And when people attack the Bills, I attack back.
Yeah, no, it's gotten a little ugly a couple times. I think some of the fans listening know some of the people that we've gone at who just continue to ask for it as we go through this. But thanks again for everybody. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys all soon, and have a great week.